Right, you're all very welcome, and first of all I would like to thank you all for particularly the All-Ireland Institute, for the opportunity to visit, I was going to say visit my homeland back in Australia, but certainly to visit Australia. Yes, I have a key interest on e-learning and online learning, and having looked at quite a lot of websites, a few things began to emerge. There's an awful lot of information out there, an awful lot of companies out there that produce online learning, that support online learning. But there was one in particular that really stood out, and that was Dexler Australia. So when the call for the submissions came out, I thought, okay, I'd like to find out more about Dexler Australia, and certainly it was certainly a fantastic visit, a fantastic company to share their learning with me. So I headed off to Melbourne to Dexler Information Solutions. Why did I pick Dexler? Well, first of all, they were focused on delivering learning solutions for organisations and institutions. What I really liked about those, it wasn't just focusing in on healthcare. It was all different types. It was corporate business, yes, it was healthcare, it was education. You name it, they were actually developing the programs, very much out there in the cold face of education. What struck me when I looked at their website was also the team approach to all of this learning. It wasn't just 2 or 3 people. There was a fantastic sense of teamwork and a very good range of people there with a variety of skills, both in terms of learning technologies, in terms of subject matter experts, just the support systems. I really got a great sense of what they had, what they could have to offer us. They offer strategic educational service and products, and again, I really like that. It wasn't just the end product that they had in mind. It was the service that they could provide from the time of inception or conception right through to the final delivery and to the rollout of the actual education. And I really needed to get a sense of that, because my vision here for education is that, from once you get the idea, how do you nurture the idea so that it will grow into a finished product? And the more I read about Dexler Australia, I thought, yes, this is the company that could bring me on this journey. Little did I realise that this journey was going to take me on the journey that it did, but it was a fantastic journey. Dexler helps learners and organisations discover what is possible through its innovative learning solutions. It wasn't as if you present and go to Dexler and say, right, this is what I want. They will actually support the different organisations in actually developing the system. They'll come up with different ideas. I suppose I went in with the notion that I don't know what it is that I don't know, but I came out knowing an awful lot more. But there's still a lot of things that I don't know what I don't know at this point in time. They're very much focused on transforming the learning experience and creating a world where everybody has the opportunity to excel. And I really liked this. I was involved in one video conferencing, and it was to China, and it was just fantastic to see how the presenters and the facilitators from Dexler were actually able to tease out some of the issues with a group of people completely away from Australia and actually get from them what they needed to learn, and they really came away being very, very knowledgeable and supporting the learners at the other end. Why Australia and why Dexler? Well, why Australia for a number of reasons, but why Dexler? First of all, it was the company experience. I really got a very, very good sense. And from the communication with them, and I know Karen would have been in communication as well, I really got a sense that it was a very welcoming organisation, but also it was the range of the skills that they could share with me during my visit. The e-learning pedagogies. Certainly the e-learning pedagogies have certainly changed over the last number of years. Gone are the days with the slate and the chalk, the blackboard, the whiteboard, the flip chart, the acetates. Gone are those days. It is now into the e-learning. Yes, there's also face-to-face, and there is place for face-to-face learning. But certainly e-learning pedagogies have changed very, very much. If you log on to any of the third level education institutes, and indeed a lot of other courses, what do you see? There's e-learning components in all of this. So really from an education point of view, we've really got to equip ourselves with the knowledge, skills and competencies in designing, developing and delivering educational programs. I felt Dexler was the right company to share their knowledge and experience with me, so that I could take some of this knowledge back and expertise in order to develop further education and palliative care. Within the Irish context, this is still in the early stages of development. And whether we like it or not, and maybe we might be a bit hesitant at times to engage in it, we do need to get out there. And certainly from the work that has been taking place within the All-Ireland Institute, all of this is really, really being embraced extremely well. So it's really, really good to see it. But we do need to push it Push it in palliative care, but push it beyond palliative care as well. We really have to broaden the horizons. We need to think outside the box. Yes, I really felt here, this all needs to be underpinned by strategy and systems. We need a strategic plan, we need a strategic vision in order to develop our educational programs. But we also need the systems. Now the systems are a minefield. As I said earlier on, I didn't know what it was that I didn't know, but now I know some of it. But I think I still have to go on quite a big learning experience in order to understand both the strategy and the systems. And again, from once I went into Dexler, I thought, yes, think systems, think strategy. That was the one key message I came home with every single day. It was really good. This really struck me. Dexler is an international company and really focusing in on learning at an international level. And the question I posed, why can't Ireland be up there from an international learning perspective? And discussing this with Glenn and his colleagues in Dexter, I thought, yes, there's really a lot of openings that could be, I suppose, generated here in Ireland so that, yes, we can be this international learning organisation as well. And again, thinking globally, thinking organisations, how can we begin to spread the news? So today's presentation, we're going to talk briefly about the roadmap. The roadmap that I learned, it's so important that we have this. Visual thinking. I thought I knew a bit about visual thinking. In fact, I knew very little about visual thinking. Responsive designs was a big word. Learning, hugely, hugely important from a Dexler point of view. The idea of storyboarding, well, sure, I thought, look, put down your ideas and you can create your little storyboard. It's far from it. It's quite a complex process. My whole attitude towards storyboarding has changed. Mastering the practices. If only I knew this way back, wouldn't I be really, really delighted? And then the summary. Bump, bump, bump. This is it. This is what it's all about. Developing the roadmap. Glenn took me on a journey about developing the roadmap for one particular company. And it was really good to see how can we make best use of, number one, our knowledge, and how can we make best use of the subject learning knowledge, and can we combine those so that we can spread this out to other organisations? But then, how do we know what those other organisations are that we need to share this information with? And it was how very, very, overtly this information was extracted from the outside organisation, from the subject matter experts, so that, yes, we could plot out a very clear strategy from beginning to end. Again, I thought initially this is somewhat ideal. And it is fought with challenges, fought with difficulties. We all know what it's like getting those deadlines, and then you get the email, where is this or where is that, And part of that roadmap, we do need to build in all of our strategic timeframes. And that was really, really good. I went on a huge learning curve when we started plotting out this roadmap. When you've plotted out the roadmap, now you need to put this thing down on visual thinking. And if Glenn taught me one thing, he said, be creative at this visual thinking. Maybe that it is putting in the squares. Maybe that it is writing up about maybe pain and symptom management. And we took that, for example, pain and symptom management, and we drew our spider diagram. What else about pain and symptom management? Where does this need to lead to in terms of learning about symptom management and palliative care? So we were able to visually plot what it was that we were doing, but see it in the context of a bigger picture. As we know, there can be traffic jams on the roadmap, there can be traffic jams as we're progressing. And as we were doing the visual thinking, what we did was say, what are the stumbling blocks around this that we might begin to encounter? What do we need now to put in place in order to overcome those roadmaps? So this was where the systems thinking was in place from a very, very early stage. But I felt from a company, a professional organisation, they knew a lot of that, whereas us as maybe the novice learners, we need to learn some of those systems. I have learned quite a lot on that since my return. Responsive designs, now you might say, what are those? In a nutshell, they are a process of enhancing the experience of the user by adapting the web page layout to the device he or she is using when accessing the site. Put very, very simply, what is it that this person is going to be using in order to access the information? And what is it do I need to consider as a designer of the learning process to put in place for all of those people? Again, I went on the learning curve. I didn't know what it was that I didn't know until as time progressed. We need to think of blogs. Sure, I know what a blog is. A blog is very simple and very straightforward, very easy to create, but is it? And again, they took me through how to set up a good blog. What is a good blog? What's a poor blog? What's an awful blog? And that was really, really good to see. A podcast, yes, we all know podcasts. And like it is like death by PowerPoint, it can also be death by podcasts. A wiki. A wiki is a website that allows collaborative modification of its content. And those were really, really good. And I saw those in action. Maybe that I'd be a bit hesitant in starting them off because God knows what's going to come up on it. And that was really, really good to see this. A mashup. Well, says I, what is this mashup? A mashup is a web application that combines data from more than one source. So we reverted back to our mashup for pain and symptom management. And then what do we say? Okay, well, what is pain? Then we began to look at the different types of pain. And suddenly, before we knew where we were, we had all of those lines going out into different, it was bringing us down different channels, different roads. And this really was our mashup. Our wireframe. Okay, what is the wireframe? This is a screen blueprint or a visual guide that represents the overall skeletal framework of the program. So I thought, now, this is really, really good. At least when once you come to this wireframe, you can see exactly the mind mapping, you can see the strategy, you can see the process, you can see where all of this is going to bring. But now, I felt, well, look, we have now got the right terminology for all of this. I won't be afraid if some learning technologist says to me, Kevin, we need to create a wireframe or we need to create a mashup. I now know what they are. They meant something totally different to me before I went off to Melbourne. The app. He took me through developing an app. And boy, I really felt that this was complex, but it was really, really good. And this is what we need to start thinking around those kind of systems. Why do we need apps? Why do we need all of those? There's a whole trend of this M-learning. What is this M-learning, you might say? Well, this M-learning is the mobile learning, where, yes, I can access content whenever I like, at a time that is suitable to me. I don't have to wait for something that is synchronized. So the M-learning is very much around the asynchronous approach to learning. However, it has its challenges because as a designer of an e-learning program, do I want this for mobile learning or do I want this as e-learning? So again, what Glenn took me through is that, well, why go for this? And they're very much into this. Why do we go for it? It's convenient and easy to access. It is, provided you've got the broadband, that you've got everything in your wireframe and in your mashup in order to access all of this. The just-in-time learning. And I suppose since I came back, looking at people on the Dart and they're going through their Google and they're going through A, B, C, D, and E. I haven't actually seen much mobile learning in action as yet, but I think as designers we need to actually facilitate this mobile learning. So it is actually the complete package. Put it in bite-sized solutions, sharp sessions. We all know that. I suppose from experience, what's another little line or two? We give them this, they might need that. They don't need it. Just give them the resource, give them the link. And where do you put that? You put that into your wireframe or let that be part of your mashup as well. It needs to be contextual and informal. That's hugely, hugely important. Because if it's not contextual, it's really not going to be relevant. And you're not going to grab your audience. And that was one thing Glenn kept saying, Kevin, grab your audience from your first screenshot. And I said, Glenn, isn't it grab your audience from the wireframe? And he said, yes, it is. It needs to be application-oriented, absolutely. And I think we're stating the obvious here. I suppose sometimes as educators we have to be able to say, how good are we at making sure that things are application-oriented? The storyboarding. Of course I knew how to do a storyboard. Everybody knows how to do a storyboard. In fact, I knew very little about storyboarding. That whole process, this is it. We need our identifiers, we need the interface design. This is everything that needs to go into our storyboard. Sure, I thought in all my innocence the storyboard was just plotting out content and plotting out what I'm actually going to be writing about. We need to go back. And where does this link into? This is going to also link into our wireframe and our mashup. Some very simple things here. However, just when you start exploring all of those, if you're very clear on your storyboard from the very start, it's actually going to make the whole process an awful lot easier. I have learned, having just finished putting together 4 units of study. So I will look at storyboarding completely opposite again. I said, Glenn, give me the solution. So he gave me loads and loads of ideas. And since I've come back and putting this presentation together, I tried to look for a framework. I love putting things into frameworks. And I really got this really good framework by McCanny in 2011. We need proper planning, maximising the SMEs, be careful of the tone and the visual design and evaluation. Now, what is all of that? The very simple questions, when once you start your storyboarding, you ask yourself those questions. What is the goal? What's the budget? But you look, how are you going to cost your time? And you were talking earlier about budget. How are we going to cost our time? Maybe we do need to stand back, because within those professional organisations, they could get it down to a fine art, how much each hour in each section is actually going to cost. Who is the audience? Now, sometimes the audience, you know all of the audience, maybe times, but as Glenn said, you know your audience and make sure you tailor your content to meet the audience. The time frame. Okay, time frame. I'm usually good on time frames, but sometimes it can fall off the planet. What is the time frame? And be very strict with it. What are the objectives? What technology is in place? And again, we do need to push ourselves. Go beyond the PowerPoint. As you know, death by PowerPoint can be awful. So this is, I'm saying, go back to our mashups. Go create your wikis. Does the content exist? Very simple and very straightforward. But the question I was saying, well, if it doesn't exist, who's actually going to create it? Who's going to develop it? What knowledge and skills have you got to support the person that's delivering this? Maximise the subject matter expert. And I just went on a wow in all of this. How do you going to maximise those people? Because going back to the previous slide here, we do need those subject matter experts to help us to put all of this together. And with the best will in the world, the subject matter expert mightn't have a clue about the design process and might be so idealistic in terms of what they think that they should be teaching, but you oftentimes have to stand back and rein them in. This was a very, very good process, I thought. Show the design process. Take them through it. This is it from start to finish. This is the map. This is the process that we're going to be going through. The milestones, I love those. I really like the key milestones. But with the best will in the world, sometimes we don't always meet them. Inform them, let them know what's needed. Okay, you're in charge of this, but also you need to listen to them and say, look, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think this is reasonable. Why? Because it's not meeting the objectives, it's not meeting the targets. Have your face-to-face meetings or have your Skype meetings. Visualise inputs and outputs, and this is your mapping, hugely, hugely important, and get them to plot it as well. Provide examples, hugely, hugely important. And as I spoke about providing examples, what are you trying to do? And it's very much, as Glenn would say, you're giving them a very clear idea as to what can be done with the subject matter, as opposed to, again, the death by PowerPoint or some, text after text after text. People will switch off. You've lost them. Because if they can see what can be done with the subject matter, they can make it that bit easier for you as well. I love this, providing the templates. And again, as we're developing more and more programs, we can develop those templates. But what you don't want then is every template that comes from a specific organisation, sure, it is predictable. You don't want that either. But as you're developing your wireframes and developing your mashup, you can begin to develop a variety of those that is relevant to the content and relevant to the context. And it was really good to see that in action. This was really good. Again, I watched a program being developed, and I thought, keeping it in mind, what is it now that we can create the nice tone and visual design? Okay, we all know those templates from PowerPoint. I mean, we can nearly predict them. But what I thought was this was pulled together really, really good. You keep it engaging but light. You want to keep your audience there. Now, you might say, shouldn't we know all of this? Yes, we know all of it. We can tick all the boxes, but how often are we actually living by it? But if we're developing e-learning here in Ireland, this is what we need to be looking at. Give it life. Have the variety, loads of activities, and the use of conversation. Now, how are you going to start off the conversation? Well, use your wiki. And where are you going to put the wiki? You're going to put the wiki on the mashup that's situated within the wireframe. It's all very simple. Okay. I really like this. Check in early. Am I meeting the needs of those that I set out to meet? And also at the back of this, you kind of say, am I meeting my own needs, or is this good enough? And that you stop asking yourself that question, is this good enough? You have to let it go sometime. Okay, you have to let it go. Check in early and check in often. Don't wait till it's too late. Is there anything as bad as having to get back to someone and say, I need you to change this and this? For God's sake, why didn't you tell me this way back? Now I have to go redo it. Check in early, check in often. And I saw that in action. My goodness, the phone would be hopping there all the time, and it was really, really good to see. Keep the roadmap in mind. Don't keep the roadmap to yourself. Share it with those people that are involved in it. Go back to the storyboard. And look at the finished product and say, yes, I've achieved what I set out to achieve. The face of my office is going to change completely. I'm going to have roadmaps, I'm going to have storyboards, I'm going to have all of that. And I thought, okay, at the end of the day, one key thing that I really took away from it. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Write it down, cut it in half, leave it there, go back to it, take a break, go back again. You complete it. And can I say, and talking about this to Glenn, and I was really driving myself around a lot of the different twists, and he said, will you just let it go? I said, I can't let it go. You can let it. We almost got into this argument between us about letting something go. So we worked on a specific project over the 5 days. I did let it go at the end. But anyway, I think that's really simple, and we've got to take that on board for effective e-learning. There's a few references. I also want to acknowledge the All-Ireland Institute, Dexler Australia and St Francis Hospice for giving me the leave to go. Thank you.